Welcome to Scripture is Truth Study, sponsored by Fellowship of the Word Christian Community. I'm Lee Harder, the pastor of the congregation and your host for these Bible studies. Right now we're engaged in looking at the culture war, which we find ourselves very much engaged in our world today. And we're on lesson 5, which is kind of a continuation of the one we started last week on the institution of education. There's a lot to cover here. Today we're going to look in part 2 at CRT and more than that besides. So, if you enjoy this time together, you enjoy this opportunity of maybe understanding a little bit more God's position on a lot of this stuff and where we're going in our world today, I would invite you to share it with family and friends. Better yet, why not subscribe? That way you won't miss out. That said, let's ask the question, what is CRT? Well, the letters stand for Critical Race Theory. CRT is an offshoot of a concept originated by Immanuel Kant in the late 18th century, about 1790. He had rejected the principles of enlightenment and the age of reason upon which the American Republic had been founded. He believed that, and this is according to Alan C. Gulso, a Princeton University professor, and wrote, reason was inadequate to give shape to our lives. Kant charged reason as a way of appealing to some very unreasonable things as explanations like race, nationality, and class, to name but a few. Because of this, it assisted in creating totalitarian ideologies in the 20th century, two that we know only too well. Marxism and Nazism, both, I'm sad to say, alive and well and living in 21st century America. These taught that all human relationships are based on power between an oppressor and the oppressed. For the Marxists, well, they branded the wealthy elites, the aristocracy, as the oppressors. For the Nazis, it was the Jew who became the oppressor. Now, in America, it is the oppressor becoming white people. And it is a given that all white people are supreme racists. And for some unknown reason, which I failed to grasp, the Jews have been branded as whites, which defies description. But somehow that's their way of thinking. So is this why you suppose those who support CRT consider America guilty of systemic racism? I suspect it might be. You see, CRT must destroy democracy because it is a holdover from the past that argues that white people, and I quote Gulso, use tricks like democracy and the search for truth to exploit and oppress and dominate people of color. Richard Delgado and Gene Stefancic, who are authors of Critical Race Theory and Introduction, wrote, and I quote, Critical Race Theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. Basically the things on which this nation has been founded. How does that strike you? For those who support CRT, the only solution to systemic oppression is inversion of color power. I mean, we know that the vast majority of Americans oppose racial discrimination. We've come a long way since the days of slavery, and while not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, we are striving to live as a people that are equal, as our founding fathers wrote in our originating documents. I mean, we're striving toward that goal. We may not have reached it yet, but that's the direction we're going, if given the opportunity. The problem is that CRT embraces it. Ibram X. Kendi, who is a CRT leading supporter, stated, and again I quote him, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination, you guessed it, is future discrimination." You know, I think of the great names of modern times. What do you think Martin Luther King would think on this particular view? Well, based on his writings and his speeches, he argued against racism in any way, shape, or form, saying that it is un-American. He appealed to the understandings expressed by our founding documents and referred to them as magnificent. So what is the danger of CRT? Well, it's led to the death of millions. Just one example, the death of 6 million Jews during the Second World War. Currently, it is becoming the genocide that has been pronounced by protest groups, not just across the United States, but around the world, referencing Jews. From the river to the sea is a declaration that Jews must be exterminated, eliminated, put to death. One of the offshoots of CRT is something called the 1619 Project. It accuses today's families for the mistakes of our ancestors, demanding they make restitution of the sufferings of the past, even if they had nothing to do with them. This has become much of the foundation for reparations thinking, reparations for slavery, giving financial recompense to minority races, in particular blacks, who are oppressed by the oppressors, who of course are the whites. CRT is a means by which institutions and our culture as a whole can be examined. It divides the world, America in particular, into white oppressors and non-white victims. Instead of traditional forms of learning and education, CRT uses personal narratives of minority victim groups, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. And by the way, the Asians are falling from grace too now because of their work ethic. And they use them as proof against their white heterosexual oppressors. CRT's goal is to remake society. If you remember from our study of Marxism, that's the goal of Marxism. To eliminate democracy, to eliminate religion. So what is their ultimate goal? What are they trying to accomplish? Well, one of the things is they create anger, frustration, and despondency among the victim class. And it eliminates free choice, but more importantly, it eliminates the individual. And it replaces it with groupthink, which is the order of the day. In fact, it's really all about groupthink. Here's a question for you. Is cancel culture, the tearing down of certain statuary, the changing of school names, team names, and street and building names, a byproduct of CRT? Of course, it has to be. because you have to eliminate the past. No independent thought. And anything that is in the past is obviously bad, evil, must be destroyed, eliminated, exorcised from our culture. Forget about the lessons we might learn. It must go. Something that is also closely connected to CRT is going by the letters DEI. What is it? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we return for part 2 of our study today, we're going to look at defining those words. I'll be right back with you.